Today I'm looking back at my first motor race, and now you might be surprised, but this is the first time I've ever looked through this onboard in full at once. I've took snippets here and there to get footage for these videos, but I've never looked at it all the way through in one go. So yeah, it's going to be sort of a live reaction in a way to what was a great moment and one of the highlights for me of 2019, because of course this is a dream I'd had for a very long time, and I was looking forward to finally getting out there and doing my first motor race. So you can see the two GoPros there. The main one is the one looking out the windscreen and out ahead, and the one in the bottom right hand side of the screen is a GoPro facing towards myself, and hopefully the two together can sort of give you a good idea about what I was going through in this race. Hopefully two sort of slightly different perspectives here. So this was the formation lap. We're doing a rolling start for this one. Unlike the road sports event I was going to be doing my first motor race in, that was a standing start. This is a rolling start, and you can see the green Saxo quite far up the order is the class leader, Marcus, the father of Chris, who I was racing alongside in my shared drive in this event here. So he'll be the target in this race, but I think I really just wanted to get out there and enjoy it. So the lights are out and away we go. I was being very, very cautious down into turn one. You see that blue Clio and this white Polo going around the outside of me here. So I think that's two positions possibly lost here on the opening lap of the race. There's a big lock up there from the Polo, and I think there's contact out in front. Yes, there is. Marcus in his green Saxo has had heavy contact here, and I think the Martin Scott BMW has also been involved in that accident as well. Now I think this was just a bit of a coming together at the run up to Druids, but of course it brought home to me quite quickly the dangers of motorsport here, and the red flags were out less than half a lap into my first motor race. At this point my heart was beating like crazy. I was obviously worried for Marcus on one hand, but also, you know, it hit home kind of there and then. You know, motorsport is dangerous, and I witnessed that firsthand. So the restart, after about 15 minutes, I've cut out all of that because of course you don't want to sit here and watch me just sit in the car for 15 minutes, but it was a long wait, and of course it made me even more nervous waiting to get out there and actually finally get my first racing lap underway. So the red flag was put out, and I think some of the order has been changed up here. I think I've lost a couple of positions from my original starting position, but anyway, I was really just focused about finishing this race and hopefully enjoying it at the same time. Obviously it's quite a stressful situation if you come into this like myself with very little experience. Obviously some people go into their first motor race having years of karting, or maybe even loads and loads of track days, but I was still relatively new to this, so of course I was very, very nervous about getting out there and just getting this race done. So this is the second formation lap in a way, and we're going to be heading back out for another rolling start here. So you can see I'm behind this Clio once again that overtook me on the initial start, and we're behind a black Mini. So right now it's only myself and a blue and orange Ford Fiesta behind me on the road in our T2 class. So only 3 cars in our class to start off with, and of course you saw Marcus having a big shunt on the first lap of this race, put him out of contention. So yes, I realise only a 3-car class, but we're leading it right now, and I guess we kept out of trouble on that first lap, which was the first sort of ticking point, but we've got to do it again. And I was sort of thrown into the deep end here. I'd never really done anything like this, and especially a rolling start. I didn't want to get too close to the person in front. Of course I was just worried about all the scenarios, so I left a big margin here. I realised that I could have definitely been closer. I could have been right up behind that Mini here, but as the lights go out, the Clio goes past me once again. I think that was already ahead of me, I don't know, but nonetheless I was going to try and follow him and the white Ford Fiesta in front. They were two very good benchmarks, and I was trying my best just to keep up with those two. Now I had about 4 cars behind me if I remember correctly at this point. I know there was a Clio, an Integra and a Fiesta for sure, and I think there possibly was one other car as well, but nonetheless I was just looking to enjoy this and try and do my best here. But you can see on this opening lap I'm being very, very cautious. If I look back to my testing times on the Friday, I was able to get into the 59-second bracket, and in my idea and in my head, I guess in my head for this race, I wanted to try and get it down around a minute. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to match that pace I set on practice day, but ideally I should be going faster. I'm knowing myself I should be going faster. You can see a bit of a slide there of the wheel. I'm very, very tentative here. I realise that I'm not pushing it to 100%. I kind of look back at this and do slightly regret not pushing harder in this race, but I hope you understand the nerves. Firstly, of just doing my first motor race, and secondly, of witnessing a big crash to teammate Marcus very early on, and he was sort of the person I contacted to get this seat in the Saxo. So I was, a little bit shaken at this point, but I was determined to sort of push on and just try and enjoy this. And there's another yellow flag, actually double yellow flag out there. There's a car off on the inside. I think that's the white Polo off on the inside of the track, and that is out of the race, so that's another position gain for us here. But you can see early on we've lost quite a significant amount of time to this Clio, and I did look at the sort of timesheet after the race, and I lost a whole bunch of time very early on in my stint. But as I sort of relaxed myself into it, it was starting to get there. I was starting to sort of match their pace, but I guess that the early phase I was always going to be slow, and well, that was the case, and unfortunately we lost a lot of time here. So I look back at this and I'm obviously happy to do my first motor race. You need to get it ticked off the list somehow, but I'm still very realistic in myself here that I could have done a lot better in this race, and I was, I think, maybe even a bit more shaken once I saw Marcus had crashed out of this race, because of course that was a bit of a worry. And then once again, or for the first time, I really had a big moment here down Paddock Hill. Now that's probably the closest I've got to the gravel in my sort of little experience in motorsport so far, so that sort of shook me up a little bit. And then you can see I sort of didn't put it into gear properly here, so I've lost quite a significant amount of time here early on. And yeah, I guess in a way I'm slightly embarrassed looking back at this, because I realised I was sort of just poodling around, and maybe in the documentary it seems a little bit more epic than it really was, but I realise I'm not really pushing it to the limit here. I mean, I'm probably pushing it for about 80% of my capabilities, and there's way beyond what I can capable of right now. I've got a lot to learn still, so I'm looking forward to 2020. Hopefully a lot more testing and so on will help me just sort of progress into a racing car, and just staying in the same car for a significant amount of time will hopefully help. And I think just the race situations, I've got quite a bit to learn here. I mean, you probably know if you used to watch my gaming videos, I was never particularly stellar at gaming racing games, for example, so I think that the real life experience has definitely helped, and I'm looking to do a lot more iRacing now in 2020. Obviously got a new subscription as well, and that will be helping me out quite a bit. But you saw once again that I'm missing the shift. I was having this constant problem from very early on, actually, in the testing day on the Friday. I was having this problem where it just wouldn't shift into gear coming out of Druid's hairpin. I have no idea why. It was the transition from second gear to third gear, if I remember correctly, and for some reason that's done it there once again. Something about getting into third gear is a bit tough right now, and that was also kind of putting me off. I was like, what's happening here? I mean, I feel like I'm not doing anything too silly here, but nonetheless, I put my hand up there. I'm not sure why. I can't remember if this is the lap I pit in, because this is a two-person race here. As we're going down through Paddock Hill once again. I didn't really actually do too many laps in my first motor race. Looking back at it here, I was, well, I guess I was just trying to sort of get it over and done with, and then hand over to Chris for the second part of the race. But I do wish, I guess it's just always hindsight, that you'd pushed it a little bit more and been able to sort of extract a little bit more out of the car. But I guess the scenario I was in, I think it was probably the best call here, to sort of take it easy, not do anything too silly, just put home lap times that you're fully within your ability, and just bring it home, especially once Marcus crashed out. I mean, I guess the idea was one of the two cars to finish on the top step of the podium in class. Of course, that was 99% going to be Marcus after qualifying, but yeah, after what happened in the race happened, then of course that put me in a position to be, well, leading the class and hopefully taking home the win. But nonetheless, I've got to be realistic here. There is still a car in my class behind me here, and I've got a few other cars behind me as well, as I mentioned. So I'm actually, it's unfortunate I don't have a rear facing camera, and I make a bit of a mistake here up at Druid's hairpin. I think a slight mistake, braking a little bit too late and took the wide line into the corner. I look back at this as just definitely a learning experience. There's a lot of mistakes here to learn from, and as it literally is the first time I've ever watched this through, and of course it's a little bit annoying seeing all the mistakes and realising that these mistakes weren't coming on the test day, so I guess the pressure was definitely getting to me at this point. But we will go through this experience, I guess, getting into motorsport. So yeah, I guess I've got to take what I can out of this and learn from it. But I guess most people have maybe a slight similar experience in their first motor race, probably a bit more competitive than this in terms of being quick, but nonetheless I guess I'm just happy to get this ticked off and say yes, I did do my first motor race, achieving a dream that I'd wanted to do for a very long time. So it's not too long now until we're going to be coming into the pits. So you can see that we're about 10.5 minutes into this video. It was originally supposed to be a 30-minute race, and the pit window I think it was from 10 to 20 minutes as we get lapped there for the first time. Those cars were very, very quick. I think that's the Sierra, and there's also an Integra, both very, very quick cars. They were the two battling for the lead of this race and the eventual win. So I was trying my best to just sort of keep out the way there and not do anything too silly. But I actually knew the person driving, or one of the drivers in the Integra, Rod Burley. You probably may have heard me mention him already in this series, or in this sort of compilation of videos. He helped me out quite significantly early on, and he helped me sort of get this sorted out in this. So no, I'm not coming in right now, but we're 11 minutes into this video, but it's coming soon, the pit stop. Hand over to Chris. As mentioned before, this was supposed to be a 30-minute race. It was shortened to 25 minutes after the first lap crash, and that meant that the pit window in my mind was always what it was supposed to be. I was supposed to come in around 15 minutes, but of course with the pit window the length of the race changing, the pit window would change with it as well. So I came in, I think, as early as possible, really. I think obviously 15 minutes is halfway, but I think I was going to be coming in sort of 10 to 12 minutes into the race. So around this sort of point in the race, I was definitely thinking of coming in. I was like, should I come in? And thankfully, you won't be able to tell from the footage, but thankfully I stayed out a lap longer than I was initially going to. That's because obviously the timing screen was counting down, and it was saying that I was 15 minutes left for this race, and of course that's only 10 minutes into the race. But I came into the pits at exactly the right time when I do eventually come in. If I'd pitted in one lap earlier, we'd have got a penalty, and we were very, very close. We're, I think, about 5 or 10 seconds away from getting a penalty through pitting too early. Of course, if you pit too early, then it's kind of against the rules. Everyone has to come in between an allotted time. So there we are through Druids once again. I'm determined to not have this issue with the third gear, but you saw me sort of really push it into third gear to try and make sure that it didn't slot out there. But it's a very weird little problem here. It's weird that Chris wasn't having the issue, but I was. You can see I keep looking up in my mirrors here, and I keep doing a weird thing with my hands where I'm sort of like stretching it out, if you will. It's kind of odd, but maybe that's my sort of stress reliever in the car. I'm just trying to get through this somehow. So it's weird because obviously I've been looking to doing this for a very, very long time, but then when it came to it, a lot of stress, and it was hard to particularly enjoy it because I was just so in the moment and just trying to get to the end of this race. It was hard to enjoy it as much as I actually wanted to, which is a shame, but I guess there was a lot of stress coming with this, especially, as you may know already, it was a university documentary. So actually, you can start to see that blue Civic that we lost quite early on in this race is now visible once again. So it's that was a little bit refreshing for myself there, that Civic came back. Sorry, not Civic, the Clio came back into view, as I was actually lapping the same lap times as him, and I think definitely him, but also the white Fiesta just in front of him I was a little bit slower than. So once I sort of got settled in, I wasn't lapping too badly. It was okay. It was still nothing special. I mean, we are in the slowest class, or the equal slowest class. There was T3 and TP, the two slowest class, which is a very, very similar in a lot of ways. And that's that Clio in front was in TP, if I remember correctly. So into the pit lane now, finally shifting down to second gear. Now, there wasn't a speedo on this car, if I remember correctly here. So I was just sort of winging it and hoping that I was going the right speed here, and I think if anything I was going too slowly. But you can see Chris there, actually they weren't sure that I was coming in, but thankfully they got ready and Chris sort of ran over to the garage and got his gear on. There's Marcus getting back from his accident and coming in to help his son Chris, which is a nice little gesture there. I wouldn't have been surprised if he just went to sit down after having an accident, but him, and then you can see Steve there as well, preparing the car for Chris to jump in. Now, there was a slight problem that Chris obviously is quite a bit shorter than me, so getting the seating position right was a bit of a compromise for both of us. So I went quite short, so it was quite tight for me, and you may have seen it was quite that's not particularly uncomfortable, but it was not the nicest driving position, because obviously we had to find that compromise. But once again, for Chris, it was probably a little bit too far for him. Like, he normally has this little chock on one of the pedals, and he didn't have that in this, so I think he was struggling to reach one of the pedals in this race, which was obviously not ideal, but that's the sort of compromises you have to make in a car which has a fixed seating position and having two drivers in the race. But there you are, you can see Chris, you can actually see me in the background of the shot there. I think still filled with adrenaline at this point. I'm very, very happy to have finally sort of ticked that off and say, yes, I completed my first motor race, or first half of a motor race. And yeah, I still say it myself. I mean, I don't really ever like to talk up really what I do, but I do realise that my performance was, I guess, not particularly good. I was going to say particularly poor. So that's what it is. It's obviously, I'm not ashamed of myself. I think it's a shame that I didn't go a bit quicker. But my lap times on the Friday were in the 59s, about half a second to a second slower than the regular driver Chris, who's driving now, could do on his best day. So I was happy with that. To get within a second of him quite early on, 30 minutes of testing was really quite confidence inspiring, because he's a good driver in these cars, Chris. He definitely knows what he's doing. So that filled me with quite a bit of confidence. But I guess something came about me in the race. I think the nerves and the lap 1 accident. I mean, I'm making excuses at this point, but I definitely didn't fulfill what I could have done, even if that was maybe a second and a half quicker per lap, because I think my best laps were in the 101s, maybe just dipping into the high 1 minutes. But yeah, I wasn't particularly happy with that, looking at the timesheet. But I guess I knew I could do 59s, but a lot of things coming together, and I guess the pressure of my first race, I shouldn't be too disappointed. I got to the point where we changed over, which is obviously the main thing. So I've seen a lot more of my footage than I've seen of Chris's, so this is nice reference footage here. So you can see he's coming down to Paddock Hill Bend, and there's a Seat Leon there on the inside line, sort of taking up the apex. Obviously they're just coming out of the pit lane there, and they do have a significantly faster car. So if Chris can stay with them for a little bit, that will be a good move from him. Up to Druids here, and going through here, and Chris is doing a good job here. Obviously, once you come out of the pit lane, like the driver in the Seat Leon, you don't push it 100% your outlap, because obviously that's where accidents could happen. So Chris pushing it, and you can see he's trying to adjust his mirror, because the mirror was adjusted for me, and of course the height difference means that even stuff like that is in not quite the right position. So yeah, that's all the little sort of small adjustments you need to be making once you jump into a car like this. But I want to say a massive thank you to Chris and to Marcus, to everyone that made this happen. It was really great for such a quick turnaround to sort of get this sorted. As mentioned, I only spent about 30 minutes in this car before the qualifying session, where I took probably about 8 minutes in the qualifying session. So about 40 minutes of driving before I took to the start of the race, which of course isn't that much, but nonetheless it's some experience, and I guess it's better than none. Of course, a massive thanks to Sam as well, who organised the first race. He deserves a lot of credit for all the stuff he did in this little process as well. He gave me so much valuable information, and is helping me go out racing in 2020 as well. So you'll be seeing more of him, and you'll be seeing more of Chris and Marcus as well, hopefully in 2020. So I'm hopefully going to be racing with them a couple of times in their this season as well. So exciting. I'm looking forward to it, really am. So we're coming out to one of the Clios. I think this is actually a lap, the Clio here. I think this is Giuseppe. He was sort of teaming up with Marcus and Chris as well, helping him, being helped out as well, because this was Giuseppe's first race as well. So myself and him were learning at the same time. So considering we're in very similar powered cars, I was happy to be able to stay ahead of him in my stint and actually put out a good amount of a gap. As you can see here, we're coming to I think we're coming to lap him here. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe we actually lost the position in the pit stop here, but I'm pretty sure this is lapping him. Apologies if not, maybe I've got this wrong. But Chris trying to get past there, you can see he's definitely getting held up here, Chris knows all of the racing lines, and he's driven this car a significant amount, so he's probably losing maybe a couple of seconds a lap here, trying to get past the Clio. But I think finally, there's a bit of a mistake there from the Clio. I think finally we're going to get the move done up here into the fast left-hander. Good stuff from Chris, getting up the inside and getting the overtake done. Exactly what I think we needed as a team there, just to make sure that we had the gap over the second car in our class, which was a slightly older Ford Fiesta, but it was very similar in terms of power and engine capacity. So that's why they're in the same class, obviously. But the majority of the cars in this race were higher powered than us, and I guess a little small crumb of comfort I can take from my performance is that I did jump out of my car ahead of a class above car, if that makes any sense. I was beating a car in the class above until my pit stop, which I guess is nice. It doesn't really mean anything when there's not a massive grid like this, but I take, I guess, a couple of little positives out of this little event. But overall, I look at it as a large opportunity to learn a lot going forward into this year. So yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be learning a lot over the next couple of months, and then hopefully by the time I take to my first race of 2020, it will be a bit less of a stressful experience in terms of driving, and hopefully I'll be a bit more comfortable within the car, because I think driving your own car is probably a little bit more comfortable when you're driving someone else's car and you're worrying about all of the other stuff as well. Possibly sometimes you're not being able to put in your best performance, but nonetheless, Chris here is coming up to actually lap. You can see he's already done it. He's got past the other car in our class, the blue and orange Fiesta, I should say. Blue and orange Fiesta. We've got past them, the Golf-inspired livery. We got past them, and now we're a lap ahead in our class, which is nice. Of course, it's not like there's a massive class here and we're winning. I do realise that it's a very small class here, and we're lucky to be leading, because if Marcus was still in this race, he would definitely be leading this one. He had a pace advantage over myself and Chris in qualifying. And yeah, I realise if Marcus wasn't involved in that lap 1 accident, we wouldn't have been leading this race. But now we have got a nice opportunity here to take a class victory. I mean, it is obviously quite hollow. Whoever wins out of the two of us wins this class. It's obviously a little bit hollow, having a small grid and then the fastest one by far, crashing out. It is what it is, but it's motorsport, and I guess you win some and you lose some. I'm sure I'll have some bad luck at some point to counteract this, but nonetheless, Chris is doing a great job here. I think he was pushing. I think he did just about squeeze into the 59s for one of his laps. I think he was mid 50s for one of his laps, so just a little bit faster than I'd done on the day previous in the track day. So that was nice for me, that on one of Chris's push laps on a very similar day was close to what I did in testing, but a bit gutted that I just couldn't extract that when it came to the main thing, the race. But that's what I'm here for, learning and hopefully improving for the future. So we haven't got too much of this race remaining, actually. I think we've got just over 5 minutes of this one for Chris to complete here, so that's probably 5 or 6 laps in this one, depending on where the leader is. So Chris coming up to the start-finish line, pulling across there to complete another lap. So I could mention here, I haven't really sort of talked about it in this video as per se, but this race was in the CMM-CS, so it's a Southern Championship for sort of tin tops. They do sort of sports saloons, like high-powered saloons as well, in a different category, as well as Intermarks. So there's quite a lot of different class structures, and a really friendly championship to get involved with. So I'll try to remember to leave a link in the description of this video to their website, because it was a really nice introduction to motorsport, both themselves and the 750 Motor Club. Really good organisers of events, and you kind of feel like you're kind of at home, and you're sort of meeting people that like-minded, people aren't sort of keeping you away from their car sort of thing. Everyone's willing to talk and just socialise and have a good time, because that's what motorsport, especially at a club level, should be. So yeah, I'm really happy that the two clubs I sort of got involved with are very friendly in that regard. So I'll leave a link to both of them down below. But if you're looking to race a tin top, especially in 2020 or maybe 2021, I definitely recommend looking at the CMM-CS, because there's a wide range of classes there that you can get involved with, and I think just a really friendly paddock is a nice thing as well. And I think the 750 Motor Club and the Road Sports category that I was going to be doing my first motor race in gives you a bit more variety. You don't have to have like a hatchback, if you will. There's a bit more freedom here. You can have Caterhams, you can have other cars that wouldn't be eligible for the CMM-CS. So there are lots of different categories out there, as we mentioned in our couple of videos over on this channel. And yeah, I definitely would just have a look around, but these are two really friendly clubs that I can recommend from the bottom of my heart. It was two really great experiences, and yeah, very happy to have taken part here. So you can see here on the, well, you can probably see by the length of the video, we haven't got too long remaining in this race now, and it's about Chris just sort of bringing home the car at this point. So he did say to me around the midpoint of his stint he was pushing. He was really just trying to get the best lap time possible, and as I said, he got into the 59s, the mid 59s, which is obviously a decent lap time for this car. I think Marcus's car, the green Saxo, is quite a bit quicker, so he's probably got a decent amount of pace in hand in the car. And in terms of Marcus's and Chris's ability, it's hard to tell obviously in Club Motorsport, but they both say they're very, very close. And Mechanic Steve is also a racer as well, and he's very, very quick. You may have seen him out on track in a third Saxo if you watch Club Motorsport in the UK. He's a very, very quick driver. And yeah, it was nice to see actually Steve. He didn't have his racing license at the start of this season. There's a possibility he might do the race with me, but he actually got his license sorted towards the end of the year, and he did some races and got some really good results. So it was nice to see him sort of come back and enjoy a good time in motorsport, and it was really good to see. And he was very helpful as well throughout the, I guess, the couple of weeks that I sort of knew the Bicknells, and for Steve as well. They, nice little cohesive effort to get me out on track, and it was very, very appreciated. And yeah, an interesting car to drive. The Saxo, you can't really tell I suppose from the onboard what it was actually, but it was a Citroen Saxo, sort of I think from the early 2000s or the late 90s. It was actually in a lot of ways quite a tough car to drive. It wasn't as natural to drive as the BMW. I always look at the BMW as a very, very good car to sort of get some experiences in. I still realise I had a bit to learn in that as well, but I definitely got to grips quicker with the BMW, I think, than the Saxo. I was still quite struggling towards the end, but nonetheless, I think we've only got a couple of laps to go now. I think we'll see that Chris is starting to catch the car in front, and this was actually for position. I mean, Chris, I think I've been trying to say this for a while now, Chris actually sort of started to back off towards the end of the race. He was just trying to bring the car home. Obviously, the harder you push the car, the more stressed it is, and that means that obviously there's a chance, hopefully not that likely, but a chance that there could be a problem with it and you end up retiring. So if you back off a little bit, hopefully the car won't be so stressed, and hopefully you can sort of just bring the car home. But yeah, Chris was catching up to someone in front, and it was actually for position. I think it was the white Fiesta. It's not too far up the road, I don't think. And Chris was definitely catching him towards the end of this race. I think it was Gideon September, if I remember correctly. So Chris was doing a good job at catching him up. But I guess if I want to summarise my sort of journey into this as we come towards the end of this video, a really nice experience to sort of go through all of it, chat to so many great people, get some really valuable advice from a number of different people, both from the actual driving in terms of what I can be doing, and also just tips in motorsport in general. It was a really fascinating journey, and one I'd obviously love to go through again, but it took a lot of time, it took a lot of money, and it was quite stressful. You can see actually Chris is having problems now getting the car into gear out of Druids, which is obviously a similar problem to what I was having. But yes, as I was saying, a very, very good journey. It did take a lot of time and effort and a lot of people coming together to make it happen, but I'm very appreciative of everyone that helped me out with this, friends, family, and of course Halen and George were the sort of two main film guys, but we also had lots of friends and family helping us out on that. Friends and family and amazing donators here on YouTube who made it happen financially. So yeah, I appreciate everyone. It was a really, really good journey, and very, very thankful that everyone came together to make it happen. So I think this is possibly the last lap of the race, or possibly one to go after this. And you can see there's the white Fiesta. I think Gideon was starting to slow up towards the end of the race as well, but nonetheless, the people I met on this journey, the experiences I had, yeah, I wouldn't trade it in for anything. And if you do have the means to go out there and, you know, give this a go yourself, get involved with motorsport, I realise it is expensive, it's not cheap, and if there is a way to get sponsors or work with your family to make it happen, even if it's just one race or just going karting or something, yeah, it's rewarding and it's fantastic. If you're a motorsport fan, you know, you'll remember it for the rest of your life, sort of thing. A great experience. But I think this now is the last corner of the race. You can see we've just ticked over 30 minutes into this one. I think that's Chris giving the sign and the thumbs up. There he is, punching the air. Great job from Chris, and he's waving to the marshals to say thank you to them. There we are. We won our class in my first motor race. Yes, there were only 2 finishes. I take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not going around saying that I did amazing to win my first motor race. I realise I have so much to learn, and yeah, I'm obviously a little bit disappointed in myself that I couldn't have done a little bit more, but yeah, it's best not to just sort of live on that. It's best to learn from it. Don't want to get myself down about it. I just want to try and improve in the future. And yeah, I guess it was hard to fully enjoy it as there was so much going through my head, but looking back on it, I have some really fond memories of this race in particular. The rest of the journey, a little bit less stressful. This bit was a bit more stressful, meaning it was hard to fully enjoy it, but in retrospect I enjoy it a lot more. It's just great memories, and very, very, yeah, thankful of everyone on the journey. So I just want to say thank you once again to everyone who participated in terms of filming, crew, people that just helped out in general, all of the guys that helped with the racing stuff, financially, everyone, just everyone. Very, very appreciated. And yeah, we did it. We managed to bring it home and finish our first motor race, which is great. So happy to have looked through this. Of course, it makes me a little bit disappointed in myself and my driving and speed, but nonetheless, everyone starts somewhere, and hopefully this is going to be something I can look back on in the future and say, yeah, I started there, and hopefully learned from it. Thanks everyone, I appreciate it, and I'll see you around soon. Goodbye.